Hey everybody, and welcome back to Project 224, where we are committed to applying the true knowledge and wisdom found only in Christ to the everyday world around us.
And welcome back to another Project 224.
Yo.
Hayward,
Yes?
guess what this episode is commemorating?
What is it?
1 year.
What?
Yeah.
Well, you know what we need? We need like the, you can push a button and like a bunch of people cheer and stuff.
Yes.
Sweet.
I still have not learned how to do that in a year.
I think you need like somebody else to be doing stuff. Pushing buttons.
Yeah, we need someone.
We need like an intern.
We need we need an intern.
We need an intern.
An intern. A
Who wants to be our intern?
production intern. Yeah.
Production manager.
Yes.
They just set up our stuff.
Yes. Like in the movies, I need a best boy. What's the best boy? I don't even know what they do.
I don't even know what they do.
I need one because he's the best.
I need a grip or the grip.
The key grip.
Key grip.
I need the key
What's
grip.
a key grip? That's what we need. That's awesome. A year. Congratulations. We made it this far.
Yeah, man.
That's awesome.
That's crazy. So it's only our 40th episode because we took
Life
some
gets
weeks off.
busy.
Yeah, stop judging.
Life happens.
People are judging.
Yeah.
But anyway, so
Sweet. Thanks for sticking with us, everybody. For
Absolutely.
A year. It's awesome.
I mean, we've come a long way. We have shirts now.
Yes.
We have shirts and
We've had guests on.
What
weird. We finish each other's sandwiches. Cheers again.
Oh no. Let it go.
That was weird. Good one. That was good one. Oh man. Okay, so that just happened. That was weird because we didn't know we were going to say that. Oh, all the kids are like, they're talking about Frozen. Disney's going to sue us because they own everything.
Exactly.
Somehow
we were just talking about how they're coming up with their own channel.
Yeah, Disney Plus, which I'll probably get.
Netflix is going down.
Yep. And we were saying how Blockbuster should come back all of a sudden out of the ashes.
That's right.
Take that, Netflix.
That's right. How's it feel now?
Take that. Goes around, comes around. You big bully.
That's right. I remember when I was a kid, I had a Blockbuster and a Hollywood video side by side.
Man, I remember Blockbuster nights were the best. Mm-hmm. You get to go in there and just walk around, look at whatever movie you wanted, and pick out VHS tapes. Wow.
Yeah, buddy.
But then when Blockbuster got DVDs, that was awesome.
Yeah.
I was like, oh man, our Blockbuster has DVDs.
Be Kind Rewind.
Yeah. And then all that just disappeared because of technology,
The internets.
The internets. But I mean, you think about it now, if we still have Blockbuster, people would interact more. When you walk into someone's like, oh, would you like to take the last copy of Field of Dreams?
Yes, please.
Because there's only one left.
Yeah.
You try to rush to the movie, and on the wall there's the new releases. You get one really quick.
You don't even park. You just send somebody in. Just go get it.
You just saw the sleeve on the wall. You're like, hey, there's no more left.
Yeah, because you had to find it was the sleeve with the video behind
right.
it. You had to get the
because they were thin.
Yep.
See, kids today have no idea. Now they just go on their phone on like Apple iTunes or something and just download.
Oh yeah, just download it. Just download.
I don't know.
Yeah, no.
Struggle was real back then.
Absolutely,
man.
So
Blockbuster.
So
awesome.
I got to be a little bit careful how I tell this story. I want to keep names out, but
so what does it rhyme with?
So the person was like, "Hey, I wanted to give you some like worksheets or something," and they're like, "Can you bring a thumb drive?" And I was like, I said to my wife, I was like, "Do we have any thumb drives?" Because I haven't had that. And she's like, "Why?" I'm like, "Because so and so wants to do that. They want to transfer some stuff, and I just don't have the time to teach them how to use the cloud." I don't want to do it. I'll just get the thumb drive and then put it on my cloud.
That's funny.
Because I was like, "Oh, you could just." I was like when they were texting, I wanted to text back like, "Oh, just put it in my Dropbox." I'm like, "No, I don't want to explain that. Just put it on the cloud." No,
and the cloud can get kind of complicated though because like. There's a cloud for everything.
Well, yeah.
Like, there's so many different clouds. Like, the other day, I was looking at my email. I had to set up my church email again because I just haven't looked at it. And if you've ever emailed me, I'm really sorry if I haven't got back to you because I looked and I had like over like close to 300 emails, which is nothing because my other emails, I had like 15,000. Yeah, 15,000 emails. So you know what I did? I went to every one and just said, mark as read. I don't even know what they were. I just marked them. I was like, I got to start over. So anyway.
Email them again.
Well, anyway, there was an iCloud
I'm the
email.
one that monitors the Project
I do look at those.
podcast.
I do look at those on my phone. I look at those like
we don't ignore those ones.
We
guys.
don't ignore them, right?
You just don't email us. We know this.
Just email us. Email us, people.
I've checked the link several times to make sure it works.
Because we do get emails from some people, and they get T-shirts.
That's right.
It's awesome. I don't know how we got on all that.
I don't know really.
Yeah. What should we talk about today?
But speaking of Blockbuster Video,
Oh, yeah.
let's talk about the 90s.
Okay. Let's talk about the 90s. Was that in the 90s when this happened?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So before we get to the 90s, let's start. We'll rewind just a couple of weeks back now. So, so I think we've made mention on this before on the podcast, but the recent we don't know if it's a total apostasy yet, but the recent issue going on with Josh Harris.
Mm-hmm.
So he's the writer of the book I Kiss Dating by Boy Meets Girl, something else.
Something about courting, yeah.
And he had kind of recanted those books, and then he kind of said he was getting a divorce, and then like a week or two later he's like, I'm no longer a Christian.
Yeah. And by the way,
and he said that like that isn't even a paraphrase. He's like something to the degree of
by the definition of
that by every definition that I have for what a Christian is, I am not that.
A Christian, right?
Yeah. So
he kissed Christianity goodbye, basically.
So one of the backlashes, and so many people have been talking about this. In one sense, it's been talked about to death because he was such a popular figure. But one of the things that I don't hear people mention this in passing, and nobody's really addressed, is this issue of purity culture. They talk about how this is because of purity culture, or how purity culture influenced this, or what purity culture's done to people. But I'm like, when I was talking about, I'm like, what are they even talking about when they talk about purity culture? So that's actually what I wanted to talk about today, is in the backlash of Josh Harris's apparent apostasies, the center issue of what is purity culture, and what do we do with it now?
Yeah.
What do we do with that purity culture? And to be honest, I even had to look up what was kind of defined by purity culture, because I think a lot of people use the term, but what is the definition of it? So I actually found a pretty good Gospel Coalition article that we'll post in the show notes. But purity culture basically is the term that we often use in the evangelical movement that attempted to promote biblical view of purity, based on 1 Thessalonians 4:3-8. And they did this by discouraging dating, promoting virginity before marriage, and they often use tools like purity pledges, symbols such as purity rings, and events as what's called a purity ball. So that's why I said, speaking of the 90s, it started kind of in 1993.
Right.
That's when it really, they actually started planning, I think, doing some stuff in 1992. Somebody got together with Lifeway. Lifeway started, I think, the True Love Waits conference, and then that went to the SBC, and then they wanted this whole purity, and then it kind of just took off from there. And what was going on then, people need to understand, is people who had grown up in the 70s and 80s had children.
Right.
Well, in the 70s and 80s is when the AIDS epidemic had come. People were getting HIV and AIDS, and back then, so today, getting HIV is not a death sentence like it used to be before. Now we have medications that can suppress it, and you die of something else besides AIDS. You'll die when you're 80 years old if you're healthy. Otherwise, it's something else. But back then, it was a killer.
Right.
It was a death sentence, and so, so the group 70s and 80s. So these people started having children, right? So around 92, these children would now be teenagers, and now they're faced with. I think I was reading. Just a significant increase in the number of sexual people who are having sexual partners as teenagers.
Right.
I think there was it went from like 2% of people had 10 sexual partners, 10 or more sexual partners, where now it went to almost like 20%. It was a pretty high number.
Yeah, it says here by the early 1990s, the number one cause of death. Let's see. Where is it? Oh, you're talking about after.
It said, that's what it was. 2% of American women had more than 10 sexual partners before marriage. In the 90s, it was 10%. Okay, so I was off. So 10%. And now that's where I got the number. In 2010, it's actually been 18%. So that's where I got the 20% from. So there was this reaction to it. And this guy, Richard Ross, he was a youth ministry consultant for Lifeway Christian Resources. He's the one that started this True Love Waits. Now, I remember it.
So, funny story. When I was in a band, Canon, we played at a True Love Waits rally with a well-known band you know today called Casting Crowns. We did at a high school, local high school, and there was this huge rally. in Port Orange, and we were the two bands, and we did this True Love Waits thing, and like all these high school students came, and we did a concert, us and Casting Crowns, and now and this was way back then. Now Casting Crowns is a little bit different. Now it's different members, but it's the same. Mark Hall was still then. So Mark Hall, I think only a couple of them are still in it that were back then. But anyway, we did this concert together, and I remember like them handing out bracelets and little booklets and stuff, and it was huge.
Oh yeah,
like when we got invited to do that, because back then we were both two just local church bands, like worship bands. Casting Crowns weren't what they are today.
Didn't they open for you? They're a good opening band.
I didn't want to say that on the air, but
oh no, I mean
yes, they did.
That's right.
So anyway, but it was just amazing to see like that culture phenomenon back then of True Love Waits. It was almost like the WWJD thing.
Yeah.
It was that big. It was like True Love Waits. Oh, you signed this thing. You signed a card when you walked in, or I'm sorry, when you walked out, they gave you like a little thing, and you could sign it and say, "I pledge purity." No sex before marriage.
Right.
And then you went home with it, and you told your parents about it, and it was huge.
So I had what we did in the youth group. They were going to go to a rally, and we had. I want to say they were purple. There were these purple cards. So it was a tear off. So you had the first part of the card was kind of the pledge that you were pledging. So that night they did the whole thing. I think there was video. There was our youth pastor talked, and then we all were given these cards and encouraged to take this pledge. And so we'd sign the card,
right?
And that part that we signed had a hole in the middle, and almost like a door hanger.
Yeah.
And so what they were going to do then is put these cards on a pole. That's why I had a hole in the middle. The pole was supposed to reach to the heavens. It was going to reach, and it was something about blow the ceiling off or something. And they were going to stack the cards on this pole in this stadium, like legit, like the arena,
right?
Is that what they still call it? Oh, it used to be called the arena back in the
something like that. Yeah. I was like, what's the arena? Yeah, you're right.
Okay, so and so they were hoping they'd get enough cards
to fill the hole.
To yep.
Did it?
I think it did.
Oh, that's a lot of cards because the cards are flat.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I mean, remember the SBC wanted they had a goal of 100,000.
Wow.
So I mean, I don't know how many.
And then they went from that to baptisms, right?
Maybe the pole was like on a stage and it had like a 20-foot star. I don't know.
Right. It was a retractable pole.
But I remember this, and so this is how it kind of started. And then Josh Harris, was it 2001? When did his book come out? No.
I think it's let's see.
I'm trying to think when his book came out. So when his book came out,
I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah. So when his book came out, so the movement was already going, but it took on a different.
1997.
Okay, so the year I graduated high school. So it took on a different flavor then, and that was not only just purity before marriage, but how you get there. And that was the courting. Should I date? No. Should I court? Yeah. So this took on a life of its own and really became like a thing. And this is where the purity culture came from. And now it's almost used as a pejorative, like
right.
It was something bad, and it stinks because purity should never be seen as something that was bad. But unfortunately, you tag purity culture to it, and people just like, man, they want to claws come out on that one.
Right, absolutely, yeah. Because you don't want to, back then it's like, don't mess with what I'm doing. Here's the thing too, though. I think maybe this is just, I don't know. I could be wrong. I feel like back then in the 90s, though, there was more of a distinct line of if you were literally a Christian or if you weren't.
Right.
Is that, you know what I mean? There weren't these gray areas as much in the way you lived your life, even in high school and stuff like that.
Postmodernism hadn't really taken over as much, and so there wasn't like all the shadings of Christianity that you had today.
Right.
But there were some problems with it, though.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the first problems that it had is, while in its inception it might have been a biblically based thing, it became like a rule-based thing.
Right.
It was like, don't have sex because it's a sin and it'll lead to pregnancy and STDs.
Mm-hmm.
And they would scare you.
Yeah.
They would scare you with the statistics and with testimonials and all of these things. And or it was just basically like, you don't want to ruin yourself forever by having sex before marriage.
Right.
And then it became, you don't want to give a piece of yourself away, so don't even kiss, and then don't even hug, and then
Right.
no contact.
Don't even
and,
hold hands. Yeah.
And then it's like, how am I supposed to meet people? Because it almost became like, don't even look at them.
Right.
Like, well,
Send a carrier pigeon if you want to talk to them.
yeah, that's how now I'm gonna be telling on myself, but that's how you get things like in high school, like when I was in 9th or 10th grade. Actually, no, it was probably in junior high, when you like write the note like,
Do you like me? Check yes or no.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, we've all been there.
We've been there.
Not today, because now today
Yeah.
people are Snapchatting and texting.
So, but yeah,
Tell you
they
the
should get
struggle.
back to it.
They don't know the struggle.
Man, if you don't know how to fold a piece of paper into an envelope,
If you don't know how to write words on a piece of paper,
that's right. I mean, how do you even live?
Hey, let's not even start about they don't know how to write cursive anymore. Let's not even start there,
man.
Anyway.
So think about it. What it went to then is thinking that abstinence then somehow proves your holiness. It was almost like if you have sex before marriage, you're not saved.
Right. And you
it's
never
like,
will be. Yeah.
It's like, well, that's going to be hard to deal with when you talk about David.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so and what I want to say is I think part of this movement will have a lot of virgins or a lot of people who save themselves for marriage, and they're going to be in hell because they think
their works.
Yeah.
Right.
Is what's going to save them.
Mm-hmm.
And it stinks because purity in itself is a right thing. It's a holy thing. But they missed the gospel out of it.
Right.
Something, an important scripture I want to go to, 2 Corinthians 5. Okay. 2 Corinthians 5. And this is something that I think we have to keep our mind on. Let me move so my voice can actually go into the microphone. 2 Corinthians 5, verses 14. It says, "For the love of Christ controls us, having concluded this, that one died for all, therefore all died. And he died for all, so that they who might live no longer live for themselves, but for him who died and rose again on their behalf." Okay, so plainly what it's saying is our motivation for the reason we conform to any of God's law is because the love of Christ compels us to.
Right.
That's our motivation. And if we think that rules are going to compel our love for God, that's wrong.
Absolutely. Right.
That's work-based.
Mm-hmm.
But if we understand that God's the one that gives us the love, that God's the one that's changed our heart, we're regenerated by God, and therefore that gives us a desire to do that. And the desire is a fruit, and the works is a fruit, not the root, not what causes it. Then we have a better understanding of it, and I think it's a more lifelong change.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. I know that for our group, our young adults, we just finished up a series through the fruits of the Spirit.
Yeah.
And we talked about that of you got to be really careful about legalism, because what if you start to say, well, you're not displaying this, you're not displaying this.
Right.
Well, Paul wasn't saying that. He was saying the opposite of displaying these things are, and he just went through a list of sins that can come and manifest itself. Right. And that's what this is. And I agree with you 100% that there was almost like a legalistic stronghold on basically teens, young adults in that time to say, well, if you didn't sign that card, if you didn't do this, if you did, well, then you're just, I can't even hang out with you. My parents don't even want me. Like, did you sign the True Love Waits thing?
Yeah.
I can't be around you because what if you try to take advantage of me or something like that? And I mean, where is that, you know? And
where's
churches hung on to
ring?
that.
Oh,
you know?
Man, if
Big
you didn't
time.
have a purity ring, or if you didn't, it's like, what's wrong with you?
Right. Churches were, buying the book by the droves. They were buying purity rings
for
their youth.
Over 1 million books of this I Kissed Day and Goodbye are sold.
Wow.
So that's why I had it's nice, I had the author and I'm not gonna go too far down the road, but he did have the publisher stop publishing the book, but it's like, yeah, but you sold over 1 million books, dude.
You did the damage, yeah. Well, you can look at Romans chapter 12, and it says, to present our, therefore, brothers and sisters, in view of the mercies of God, which sometimes we can overlook that right there.
Right.
In view of the mercies of God.
Right.
Well, the mercies of God encompass all these things. The mercy of God says that if this does happen to you, God is merciful.
Yeah,
it's
the
forgive
gospel.
You.
Right.
So, in view of the mercies of God, I urge you to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true worship. And then, verse 2, do not be conformed to this age, but be transformed by a book called I Kiss Dating.
Yeah.
No, it says, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind so
Right.
that you may discern what is the good, pleasing, and perfect will of God. I mean, it's pretty plain right there.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, the reason we do it is because of the mercy of God. The reason we do this is because of what God has done for us. And you're right. Our power source is
Right.
not a book. Well, it's not a book that's been produced by man. It's the Bible.
Right.
And so that's the book that we need to go to. That would be our standard. And that leads to the other thing too. When we talk about, you know, 1 million copies and this and that my next problem with this movement is it became a culture of hype, just like you said, just like the WWJD, just like wearing those bracelets,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
It was a culture of hype. I mean, people like Miley Cyrus and Demi Lovato, who are people today
Right.
that are far from God,
Promiscuous. And
right? I mean, they all did the
they
purity
boast in their
ring and
sexual-
all that,
right.
right? Yeah, and then she did a wrecking ball after
Right.
Where's your purity ring?
Yeah, I don't see that in the video.
Yeah. So, you know, that's the thing is it became less about the gospel and more about perpetuating itself as a movement. And this is what we talk about all the time with churches, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they wanted to perpetuate their true love waits. They wanted to perpetuate their purity culture. And so they're just selling a product almost now.
Yeah.
And they see this as a commodity
Mm-hmm.
and a commodity that's going to make them money. I mean, Lifeway probably made tons of money from this.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So the problem is churches grab onto it almost the same way. They want to perpetuate themselves. And so they have these cultural movements that they do. And that's why they change themselves and they go extra biblical and you know, into whatever way they can so they can be these mega churches.
Mm-hmm.
And they try to do whatever type of advertising, whatever type of thing they can do to draw people to themselves, not for the gospel's sake, but for their own perpetuation, their own success as a group. So they become a club. They're
Yeah.
not a church.
Yeah.
Because a church is going to say that Jesus will build this church. We're going to stay faithful to the gospel, and whoever Jesus brings to us, we're going to minister to.
Mm-hmm.
Not we're going to conform to the culture, or we're going to try and create these movements here that are going to take on a life of its own, and you know,
Right.
it becomes more of a club.
Yeah. Let's just grab onto the newest fad, the newest thing
Right.
to get people in our buildings.
Right.
But, you know, so we can build bigger buildings. We can do this. But what's going to happen is, and I've heard this years ago, you're going to have a lot of surprised people in hell.
Yeah.
You know, that went to a church and said, "But you told me this," where the answer should have been, "But the Bible says this."
Yeah. That purity ring's going to burn right off your finger.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
If your soul isn't to God. Now, I don't want to mean that everyone who's grabbed onto this. A lot of well-meaning Christians were grabbed onto this too. So I don't want to condemn everybody on this, but I think there's going to be a lot of people who are going to try and point to the purity ring and be like, well, I did this.
Right.
And God's going to say, "Depart from me, I never knew you."
Right. I didn't call you to that. I called you to holiness and righteousness. And
Right.
yeah, it's really interesting because, you know, there was a lot of damage. I mean, there was, like you said, there was good things that came out of it. I mean, I'm not gonna, let's just be honest.
Right.
I think there were probably some good conversations that came out between
Right.
parents and their kids in ways that they probably couldn't have talked about before.
Right.
You know, hey, let's read this book together. Let's go
Right.
through this book together. There was counseling sessions, probably between elders and pastors and young people in their church that they used this book. So praise the Lord for that.
Right.
But that is not the final authority. And
Right.
that was what was happening back then. Is I feel like that book had so much weight to it in the churches, and what's happening is the outcry or the what we're seeing now with Joshua Harris is the damage that happened when you elevate someone or something to where it shouldn't be,
Right.
especially in the church.
Right. I'm of Apollos. I'm of Paul. I'm
Right.
of, you know, like, no,
Right.
that's not how this. And when you do that, if those people fall, you go with them. I mean, and that was the thing. Like, it was so much of a cultural thing that I think they missed what God really is going after, and that's He's going after your heart.
Right.
Okay, because let me tell you, Jesus plainly said that you can have your purity challenge, sign your card, wear your ring, and even not technically have intercourse before marriage, and still commit adultery in your heart.
Yeah. If you lust after someone, I mean,
So what we're after here is, yes, we are at. So what we're not saying is, oh, well, the thought, then you might as well do the action. No, we're not saying that.
right.
What we're saying is, what God is after is the heart. Man looks on the outside. God looks at the heart.
Absolutely.
And God is after your heart and true heart change. And that's what we want. And that isn't done through externals. That's not done through signing something, putting something on your finger. Those should be reminders of what's on the inside of your heart. When I put on the ring, when I got married, it wasn't that this ring, then somehow the ring went on and it was like some like superhero thing where like energy went through him and I was like, I am married, I am husband. It is a symbol of what I had already committed. By the power of my ring.
I have the power.
So it was something to symbolize what's already been done in my heart.
Right.
And that's what the true love weight should be about. That's what the purity rings and those things should be about, is a symbolizing of what's going on in my heart. And it shouldn't be something that is compulsory. It should be something that you would have done anyways.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what we need to be after, is people's hearts. We need to be at, and the only way you can do that is through the gospel. You can't change someone's heart any other way.
Right.
It's only done through the gospel. It's only done through the word of God. It's only done through the Holy Spirit. He's the one that does it. And that's where we need to be spending our focus, not on these cultural things, because these fads go.
Yeah.
And these fads, honestly, what I've seen in my lifetime is as these fads go, they get so big, and then you almost see corruption within the thing, and then it blows up. It either peters out where it just fizzles, or it blows up, and then it just leaves a trail of damage in its wake. And that's what happened here. And that's what you see. It was a culture then where churches absolutely wanted to think that they were so pure, and so they would hide sexual immorality and sexual abuse in their church, so they didn't have to admit that this was going on
behind that, right?
Because they wanted to show themselves that no, we're a purity culture type church. And in fact, this happened in Josh Harris's church.
Yeah, right.
When he was pastor. So, this is the type of thing that can happen when you don't go after the gospel and changed hearts.
Absolutely, right.
And we have to be people who are going after changed hearts. So I don't care so much about what is on your finger. I care about what's in your heart.
Yeah, and that's exactly what God is saying in those things. And like what we've said about Romans 12, that's what he's saying. Like, your life is a spiritual worship unto him.
Yeah.
And worship means worthship, which means he is worthy of it, which means everything else about our lives is not worthy of that acknowledgement, of that time, of that space, whatever that is in your life. He is only worthy of that. So when those thoughts of immorality or things come up, do we fall? Absolutely. But again, that's where he talks about the mercies of God.
Right.
Like we rest on the mercies of God. And so I don't have to rest. I mean, back then, a lot of it was probably just the preaching that was happening, I mean, like you said, like churches were like grabbing onto this and wanting him to speak at their churches and having these rallies everywhere. I'm sure there was, this is a long time ago, but I'm sure there was months where it was like, this is the True Love Waits month. And think about this. Back then, public schools were having this in their schools.
Yeah.
Try doing that today.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, it just shows the disconnect of what is pure and right in the eyes of God, and just how, I mean, praise the Lord that God shakes everything that can be shaken, anything that shows that it is not of him. But you just think about the difference between now and then. I mean, in these high schools were packed full of students.
Absolutely.
I remember doing that concert and looking around like, man, this is a full on, like, for us back then, it seemed like an auditorium, like an arena filled with people, because it's just all around and kids are going nuts and really into the music. And it was just like, man, and we're sitting there teaching about, and I'm part of that, because I'm sitting there saying, I don't know what I said.
Way to go, Hayward.
Oh yeah, okay, I was part of it. I don't know. I don't really know what I said back then, but I don't even think I was a Christian back then, to be honest. Oh wait, no, this is after I was in canon. I was a believer. Sorry,
I was gonna say
this is when I was in canon.
This is a revelation.
This is one of the really. This is one of those things where like you're in a situation and you're kind of, you should have, now knowing our group. To be honest, and I wish I could have go back then, I'm pretty sure it was just like the gospel, because that's where we, being from the church we're from.
Oh, right.
It was like the gospel. But I do remember being in situations where it wasn't always that.
No. I mean, so, let's be clear about this. You have a difference between some of the people, the cultural movement, and some of the, maybe the leadership and some of like the main, and then how this kind of filters out into the periphery, where kind of where you were. In that, yes, you're doing concerts and with it, but you're not up at Lifeway making decisions about how this goes.
Right.
You're a person that's like, because on the surface it did look like a great cause, and honestly, and in many ways, it still is a good
Right.
cause. Purity,
We do want people pure,
abstinence,
right.
these things are good things.
Right.
But what happened is how people took it and perpetuated it without the gospel.
Right.
But that doesn't mean it happened 100% of the time. I am more than confident, because I know that how it happened in my youth group, that this was done with the gospel.
Right.
But what I'm saying is that wasn't always the case.
Absolutely.
And
Right.
so, in fact, that's the last thing, is this thing perpetuated a legalistic lifestyle in which people started teaching commands beyond the Bible.
Yeah.
To be clear, there are no guidelines in the Bible about how we meet each other to be married. And what I'm trying to say there is,
Right.
whether or not dating or courtship or whatever, you go in the Bible, there are so many different ways. The first way that a man met a woman was that the man woke up and she was right there.
Right.
And God's like, well, I mean, she was the only one. It's like,
He's like, what is
okay.
that? Oh, it's a woman. Oh, and she's gonna be your wife. Oh, okay. There it goes.
Yeah. So that doesn't happen
Right.
anymore.
There was no coffee. There was no
right.
Yeah.
Then you had other things where people just picked out your wife. You had Ruth, who slept at the feet of.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, that's a weird way to do that. That's not. I would not suggest that women don't go to the
don't
guy
do
you
that.
like and sleep at their feet. Yeah, that'd be weird. So there's a lot of different ways that this happened. Anyways, I was thinking about, didn't he give a sandal to somebody to like?
I think so. Yeah.
It's a weird one too. So those are cultural. That is all cultural stuff.
Mm-hmm.
God doesn't necessarily care about the mechanics of how that goes, whether you date or whether you court. What he cares about is what's in your heart,
Mm-hmm.
and the type of people that you're trying to meet, and are those people going to point you to God?
Right.
Now, granted, there are some things in courtship that are good. You should get your parents involved to some degree with that, because they're your parents. They know you, and they know the traps of other people.
Right.
That's the point. They are people who've been through life, and they understand some of this, and they see the outworkings of what some people who they see the way that they start, and they go, oh, this has led to this in the past. So
Mm-hmm.
they're there to help you. Hopefully they're there to help you and to guide you, but you don't have to go through the principles of courtship. That's not a biblical mandate.
Right.
It could be a guide that your parents choose to use, and that's between you and your parents. But other than that, it's not a biblical mandate. I'm just gonna say it's not a biblical mandate.
Right. There's nothing in the Bible that says you must court for this amount of time, or doing this, doing
Right.
that before.
And plainly, some of this courtship and other stuff led to people not getting married
Mm-hmm.
because they thought, well, if I just stay abstinent and pure my whole life, that somehow that's better. And well, no.
Right.
And just like, you don't have to get married right out of high school either.
Right.
The Bible allows for a whole spectrum of that.
Yeah.
People getting married young and people getting married old.
And some not even getting married.
And
Paul talks about
and
that.
Some not getting married at all. Yeah.
1 Corinthians
absolutely.
7. He talks
Yeah.
about that. I'd rather you be
absolutely. And that's exactly he said that in Corinthians 7 is marriage is not even required.
Right.
So that's not going to be a requirement of your salvation or holiness or anything to do with that. So we have to be careful about what we do here.
Right.
And maybe talking about wisdom versus mandate, versus what we connect to our salvation even.
Mm-hmm.
And some of this stuff I remember was even connected to salvation, and are you even a Christian if you don't? It's like you're dating your
Right.
parents let you. I mean, I remember that,
Mm-hmm.
and it split. I mean, I remember it split not families, but like families that were friends with other families.
Right.
It was like you're
Like
gonna
your
let
kids, even if your kids held hands. you're
what
like,
age are you gonna let your kids
Right.
date at? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like that's like we can't let you hang around that person.
Right.
Like I mean, it got really legalistic.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't let that kind of stuff divide us, especially because, again, purity is not a bad thing.
Right.
God calls us to be pure. 1 Thessalonians. The thing that this was all based on, this is the sad part about it, is there was a biblical reason to start this. 1 Thessalonians 4, verses 3, it says, "For this is the will of God, your sanctification, that is, that you abstain from sexual immorality, that each of you know how to possess his own vessel in sanctification and honor, not in lustful passion like the Gentiles who do not know God." So, I mean, there is a biblical mandate here for purity,
Mm-hmm.
but we took it outside the Bible.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's, I mean, and that's part of, we talk about so many times with atheism and how Project 224 is here to speak out that the Bible speaks to everything, but we're also here to talk about when we take things outside of the realm of the Bible. It's a road with a ditch on either side, right?
Yep.
And many times we're so scared of going, we'll call left liberal. We're so afraid of going liberal that we jerk the wheel to the right. Well, there's a ditch on the right too.
Right. Yeah.
And to prove that, the people who Jesus called out most of the time were people who were on the right
Mm-hmm.
in that ditch. It was the Pharisees.
Right. It's the high and lofty who thought that they had everything figured out. And yeah, they were starting to include their own thoughts and laws into what God had said. No, this is truth. Yeah. And it says, yeah, but this can kind of go too. And I think you're right. I think this is what sometimes the church has done, continues to do, and sadly enough, will probably continue to do. It really takes a humbling of a people, a humbling of elders, pastors, to understand that the Bible is the final authority. Right. Not a man that's standing in front. Right. Not, let's be honest, not even a group of elders together. It's the Bible. What the Bible says is clear. So, I mean, if you're in a place where your elders or leaders or whatever are calling you to things that you see are against the Bible, right, you need to be somewhere else. Yeah. Like, you literally need to be somewhere else. I
mean, you can address it to the elders, right, and maybe you have a misunderstanding of their right, opinion or right, of what they're interpreting in the Bible, but right, in the end of the day, if they're clearly calling you something that's in the Bible, right, then yes.
Yeah. So there needs to be and I think that comes with a lot of times of we need to understand the Bible. Like, we need to be reading the Bible. We need to be in the Word. We can't just because someone's saying something to me, oh, yeah, I take that because you told me that verse. No, you need to be in the Bible and understanding what it's saying. And so, and let's be honest, maybe back then a lot of young people just weren't studying and being involved in the church and stuff like that as should have been. Right. And maybe that's where that whole culture came from. But
that's when we let people tell us what to do instead of looking for it in the Bible, which we've talked about before. Right. And so don't throw purity. Throw the purity culture that was from back then away, but don't throw purity culture away in the sense of what the Bible calls us to. And that, I think that at the end of the day is my message. Yeah. I totally understand the bad parts about purity culture. And we outlined a bunch of them here today, but you can't throw everything out. And that's what's happened. So many people have rebelled against it. It's like, oh, the Bible's a bunch of garbage. Look at what it did. It perpetuated sexual abuse, and not talking about it and not addressing it and all of those things. No. That should have been dealt with. The Bible's very clear on that stuff as well. So don't let people's misrepresentation of the Bible cause you to want to throw away the Bible too. Right. The Bible stands. God has a message for that too. And we have to be people who are sticking to the Bible for everything that we do.
That's good. That's good. It's a good conversation.
Absolutely.
To have, and I'm sure more things like this are going to come up, and it's what gives us more things to talk about.
Yeah. But hey, we'd love to listen or hear from you if you have any comments, if you want to rage against us, or if you want to mail us your purity ring and say, I'm throwing it away.
Please don't do that.
We'll melt it down and make a Project 224 ring.
My precious. Yeah, we'll do that. We'll have the one ring. We'll just put all the rings in one ring. That'd be funny.
One to rule them all, right? Isn't that what it is?
Seriously.
This got off track. Email us, project224podcast@gmail.com. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram.
We're everywhere.
Remember the Better Than Butter Challenge. Remember to send us pictures of your shirt if you have a shirt.
Wear your shirts.
If you don't have a shirt, email us, get a shirt, and then put it on Instagram. This isn't difficult.
Right.
Email us. Remember, what is it, 6 words? Love the show. I'm a large.
Which we've gotten that before. Yeah. I got an email before.
That's all you got to do. Right. You get your shirt, take a picture. It doesn't even have your face in it. Right. Put it on Instagram. We'll love it.
Right.
Everyone likes
Tag
likes.
us in it. It's
Everyone
cool.
likes.
Go to Apple Podcasts and give us 5 stars.
Yes.
It takes like 2 seconds to do.
Yeah, just 5 stars.
Just find the stars and click it.
Yeah.
And it's done.
And then go to other podcasts and give them 1 star. No, I'm just kidding. Don't do that.
Not as good as this one.
Yeah, not as good as, and then link ours. Yeah. No, don't do that. All right, guys. Well, anyways, good episode. We love you.
Talk to you soon.